Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, August 17th, 2022, and today we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last few days. As we do each week, we take our themes for our questions for the Roundup from our newsletter that comes out on Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern. And as we do each week, we drop the links to both the website where you can subscribe to that newsletter and also subscribe to our podcast version of this roundup if you're so inclined to catch the audio-only version. Also dropping the links for the newsletter edition that came out on Monday in case you would like to catch up as we go along today with the news stories that were featured in that newsletter. And if you prefer to get your stories from LinkedIn, we have the newsletter condensed into a nice digest form that you can get Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern or so as well. So I want to say a big shout out to those that are joining live as we do each week, getting a chance to get your takes on some of these important questions of the day. Some of these are rhetorical questions. Some of these are spurred on by themes we've seen in some of the news articles that we're covering today in the roundup. But what we will always start with are questions that have relevance to how we do what we do in international education in the United States. And I say this with humility each week because these topics aren't ones that necessarily I'm the only one who's seen them. These are topics that we cover that have been certainly others have put out articles about them. There have been news stories about them. So we're doing this to present, frankly, the SMIE take, but also to encourage debate on these topics because ours is not a monolithic industry. There are many ways of doing the same thing, and some successfully, some not. One of those phenomena we've dealt with as an industry in the last 10, 15 years has been the rise of educational agents, certainly within the United States. We always recognize that Australia had started with using agents back in 1987, where they kind of formed it as their consortium of universities, 40-odd universities in Australia, and agreed with IDP to be their representatives out in the field, and that would be how they began using agencies. But that has changed over the years. And one of the more recent changes is that we now have various forms of agents that are part of the mix for many universities in many countries around the world. Many of these agents recruit students to go to many different destinations as well. So we are in a situation with what's happening in international education these days, particularly in the United States, but we see this quite a bit in terms of the market, international ed tech market in particular, that has been besieged over the last probably 4 or 5 years with the rise of the aggregators, agent aggregators. One of those is Applyboard, another is Adventus. You see other groups like Educo also coming into this space, and there are others as well out there, but those are the ones that certainly have garnered a lot of attention in terms of bandwidth and certainly international ed news. But I'm going to share with you today two pieces. First of which is an interview with Applyboard co-founder Martin Basiri. And he is a former Iranian student who came to Canada for his advanced degrees. And then years later, he decided he wanted to start Applyboard as a way to help a broader range of people, students, find their way to study abroad outside their home countries. And Applyboard was created. What Applyboard is one of those aggregators where on the public side of what you see are profiles of different institutions with very detailed information about their admission requirements and a series of agents around the world that are helping students use the Applyboard site to manage their university search. So fairly straightforward in terms of how that works. But the way Applyboard works with institutions is much like they do as agents do with institutions, that students that come through the Applyboard platform and agents to universities that will then pay apply board a commission for the students that enroll. And those commission rates vary from 15 to 20% of net tuition revenue to a flat fees, depending on the fee, $2,500, $3,000, that type of thing. That's the range we're generally talking about. So what Martin Passeri has done with Apply Board, they have a massive staff globally now that are managing student inquiries and applications and through the process, and are supposed to be doing this extensive vetting of these students before they apply to make sure that when they apply, they're applying with everything that they need to be considered, hopefully good candidates for those positions that they're applying for. So it's supposed to ease that process. Now, aside from the concept of, and there's some questions this week about Apply Board's, the founder, their truth in advertising, I guess, is, or how they're expressing their reach. And there's a couple articles on that too, but I'm including those in the chat. But the main pieces I'm bringing out of these two articles, one is an interview with Martin Passeri through at a Forbes event. And the other is from David Adler. David Adler is president and CEO of uStudy, and also part of ApplyWave. That's their their platform arm for their not quite an aggregator, but certainly they deal with agencies in a number of different countries that work through them to connect students with university options. So both of them have different takes on whether the United States is lagging behind on international students. Martin's position is looking at capacity. And as you know from the Roundup, we talk about this fairly significantly as to why the U.S. has the most room to grow, frankly. We're at about 5% of our higher education population in the United States is international. In other countries, Canada, UK, 20-25%. In Australia, 30-35%. Even up to 45-50% at some institutions in Canada, particularly on the vocational technology side, and certainly in Canada and Australia in those sectors. So in his eyes, we're falling behind because we are not maximizing our capacity, basically. And also we have other issues to deal with in terms of our process, in terms of some of the public relation issues we've had to deal with in recent years with gun violence and anti-Asian hate. All those things in key markets can be seen as very negative. And certainly those that have made it here, even despite those obstacles, are ones we need to be doing everything we can to keep and treat well so that they can go home and tell the real story about how life is for students on college campuses in the U.S. And ultimately, that's what we want. We want every student to be able to say in a positive way that wherever they come in the United States, that they have a positive experience that's helped them grow as an individual, helped set them up for success in their career at the end of the road. That's what you want from every student that comes, whether domestic student, international student, first-gen student, BIPOC students, all the various groups that our colleges and university campuses are grappling with and trying to include and make sure that they have access to the right facilities and are treated equally on campus, all of these things. So that's what we want for all of our students. So Martin's right in the way saying that we're lagging behind because we're not at 20, 25, 30%. And could you imagine what our country would be like? What our campuses and communities that they are surrounded by would be like if 20 to 25% of the students that were attending universities in the United States and colleges were from overseas? What an amazing experience that would be for the other 80%, 75 to 80% of the community, college community, if they were all if they were being exposed every day in class in terms of the ideas that they have, their backgrounds, their cultures, how many stereotypes would be broken down in terms of our expectations of other cultures from other people from other countries. That's all what we could only dream of, having something like that. We've just got such a massive higher ed structure in the U.S. Even though it's 5% on average, there are some schools that are in the 10, 15, 20% range, sure, but very few have more than 20%, probably count those on two hands and maybe a foot, so that are that significantly international. But you certainly want to know that there is room to grow because there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of universities in the U.S. that aren't actively recruiting international students for a variety of reasons, many of which are budget or staffing related. And certainly you don't want to be extending yourself internationally if you don't have in terms of students you're bringing in, if you don't have the support for them once they get on campus. But what these two leaders really from the agent side and the higher ed side in the ed tech space are saying is, from Martin Basiri's perspective from Apply Board, we're not maximizing our capacity as a country for international students. There's so much more we could do. And then you also have David Adler saying, what he's saying is that how his article is titled "How U.S. Universities Lose Millions of Dollars Every Year." That's a LinkedIn article he penned last week, and it's one that I think should actually be titled "How U.S. institutions can make millions of dollars every year," even though that's a kind of a sordid way of looking at things. But in terms of his vision, he's saying that that institutions, if they're going to enhance their global reputation and their international students coming to campus, really it's about putting yourself out there, getting your brand out. And for most colleges, if they have recognition domestically, that doesn't always translate, in fact, rarely does, to recognition internationally. You have to have been out there. You have to have had hundreds, if not thousands, of international students come through your campus. You need to have captured their success stories. You need to have gotten your brand out there physically, through study abroad, whatever it might be. You need to have a presence, and most colleges in the U.S. don't. So it takes money to do that, but it's not big budgets all the way, every time. And there's a lot of online tools that can be leveraged for little or no cost to do that, to get your brand out there. Sometimes it's a scholarship, having something, even up to quarter to half scholarship are what I certainly recommend to university clients in the past. And sometimes it takes a while to generate the interest and demand and the need for that to be put in place. But something has to be part of your unique package that makes a student say, yes, I want to study there. David talks about a smoother and easier application process. As I've mentioned many times before, we overthink things in the U.S. when it comes to our college admissions process. We think we're so selective, but really we're not. We think we're very holistic in terms of how we approach admissions, but in the end, the details are often very minor. And minuscule in terms of the differentiators between getting admitted and not. Often it's a GPA or a test score. Thankfully, many of us have gotten rid of the test score requirement as a required part of admissions for international students. I think that we should be test blind, so it removes that entirely as a potential hurdle for them. Application fees can be another significant hurdle. Deadlines and teacher recommendation letters, essays, all of these are extras that may or may not really in the end give you, unless you're an extremely selective institution where you can craft your class and have single-digit admission rates, what's the point of those in the overall process? So the other piece is having effective networks, whether that be high school counselor networks or agent networks, needing relationships, developing those, maintaining those, and informing those. It's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing that you sign up all these agents. You shouldn't expect all of a sudden students to start showing up because of that. You need to do the work. Maintain that relationship, give them updated information, do where you can do the webinars for them to provide the direct contact, that information that they need on an ongoing basis. And really be a leader, and that's something in the decision-maker roles at institutions is a really critical element, and one that I think David makes a very good case for is areas that many U.S. colleges are frankly lagging behind. So in terms of what's next, I think what we always see and hear about for U.S. institutions is, particularly in the post-pandemic era, is what kind of challenges are we facing? And there's a myriad of them. And I think what we often forget is that we're not alone, and that in fact there are many institutions that will be sharing similar challenges and concerns. And let's go to an article, actually Karen Fisher's Latitudes newsletter. Top story for that this week is what's the future of international recruitment, and it takes a look at the pandemic's impact. She talks with several leaders in international ed from across the country, talking to Samba Jiang at LSU. He's a senior international officer there. He talks about preparing students, being prepared on campus for future instability, from pandemics, geopolitical issues. All of that needs to be part of our preparedness, and that we need to get ready for that and use some of those experiences we've had in terms of what we want to need to provide during those times of uncertainty. Samba also makes the case, along with for diversifying the international pipeline, alongside Jun Wang from UCR, University of California, Riverside, and that have very different approaches to diversifying and recruitment. At LSU, Samba's talking about not being overly reliant on China and India, as most colleges are. And he makes the case for Africa being an important focus, and given the explosive growth that is happening there, where 60% of the continent's population is under 25, so right in that college age mix. UCR has a very different policy. They're in post-pandemic life, they're getting everybody out on the road. They're going to be traveling to 42 countries on 6 continents. But prioritizing Middle East and Southeast Asia. So different regions, different priorities, are different colleges, different priorities in terms of where they recruit. So, but knowing your selling points is also an important piece, and David Adler mentioned that in his piece. Knowing what your top selling points are to universities, to students abroad. And I think we have prided ourselves, enrollment management is a part of university life that for years has prided themselves on being data driven. And domestically, there's been a lot of truth to that. Internationally, less so. But over the last 2-3 years of intakes from fall of 2021 and now 22, we've been seeing a vastly different playing field in terms of what students who are looking to come here are up against in terms of access to visa appointments and ability to travel. In 2020, the travel piece was basically unavailable, even though there were some posts that were consulates still open. Like greater majority of students who wanted to travel couldn't, because of the travel restrictions that were still in place. In 21, we had a vaccine. Colleges were requiring negative COVID tests, if not vaccines, in order to come to campus. And just before the school year started, we had the vaccine mandate that all international travelers would have to have a vaccine. So that's changed the dynamic as well, as consulates have slowly reopened. They're not fully open everywhere yet. In China, there's still massive challenges in terms of having visa appointments open. There's been significant drop-offs as a result in Chinese students getting visas to come, just because they're not staffing. They're not back up to full staffing. Most of the consulates have still had emergency appointment onlys. Some have returned to regular office hours and go into lockdown. There's been a very variable effect in China in terms of availability of appointments. So that's been a real challenge for us to regain some of that China market. So there's predictability on terms of yield, especially, it has been very hard to pin down in the last 3 intakes, particularly this coming fall term, where you would hope it'd be much better than last year. But in certain countries it will. India, the numbers will be up dramatically. China, not so much. Maybe still below pre-pandemic levels. So we'll see where we will get, where we'll be in another month or two when we start seeing some of these fall numbers coming in. But some of the challenges that the article also mentions that Karen writes about is the effect of the Great Resignation in international ed. I've spoken about that here on the Roundup several times, where there's been just this incredible loss of talent over the years, the last 3 years. now, where you would have senior leadership at institutions make the decision, well, it's budgetary reasons, let's cut the senior people in all these fields, regardless of or cut entire departments, regardless of the impact that would have to regrow that. It doesn't happen overnight. And certainly there's been a lot of people in our field that, if they haven't left the profession entirely, have gone over to the dark side and are now working for service providers. And as that ed tech side of the equation for international education has come to dominate on the service provider side, you can imagine that there's been some attraction to bring students over, or to bring the talent from university side over to work for these service providers that are looking to build their reputations, build their portfolio of institutions, and having people who have studied abroad, that's certain, or have been in the game and know the other side of the desk that they're going to be talking to in terms of recruiting them. There's a lot of value in that, and in the past, when I was just starting out my consulting career, that was one of the things I needed to do to keep the lights on and keep paying the bills. So I totally get why people do that, and wanting a change from the day-to-day grind of universities and the unpredictability of it. But there's a degree of unpredictability on the other side as well, on the service provider side. And promises are made, and promises are broken regularly, and expectations are way too high than what you're able to deliver on. And those are always challenges that you face on the service provider side. So, but that great resignation, certainly you certainly feel that. I've spoken about it here several times from the 3 major conferences this summer, from NAFSA, where 40% were first-timers, to International ACAC, where about 50% were first-timers, to the Education USA Forum, where, again, about 50% were first-timers. You see that kind of shift, seismic shift, frankly, in our profession. And that's a direct result of people leaving or being let go over the last 3 years. So until we overcome some of those personnel challenges and regrow that talent, it's not an overnight thing at all. You have to be prepared to suck it up sometimes and regrow, and will take time. And the taps aren't immediately going to be turned back on because there are a lot of moving parts here that make it possible for students to again return in the way they once did. And hopefully there'll be new markets that'll come in that will refresh some of those older markets and take the place some older markets that maybe is not as fruitful as we've seen in the past. So that's the second question. My last question that I really wanted to get into this week, and I've always had, and I'm not attributing this as the reason why the UK has gotten ahead of us in terms of rebounding from the pandemic as well as they have over the last 2 years. For fall 21 and fall 22, their intakes are going to be off the charts. Why is that? They've just been overwhelmed by new Chinese interest. They're rebounding in India with the reintroduction of the post-study work visa a couple of years ago. Now they're able to fully implement that and realize the benefits of it. So we've seen U.S. kind of start to regain its footing, but the UK has continued. We're still the largest destination. We're not in any danger of losing that in the next 4 or 5 years. But the way some institutions within the UK have gone about their growth over the last 5 years is quite eye-opening. And the link I'm dropping into the chat now, it's from the Pi News, and it profiles UK universities that in the last, or in the 2021-22 academic year, paid £9 million each. Let me make sure I've got that right. £9 million each to agents in terms of commission fees. Now let's break that down a little bit. So this is really telling. We mentioned earlier when we were talking about the function of agents and for commission-based agents, and they get a fee, either a percentage of first-year net tuition revenue or a flat fee per year for a student that enrolls. In the UK, similar structures are in place, But here are the numbers from, let's say, for example, Exeter, University of Exeter. They paid in 2021 £9 million to recruit 1,800 postgraduate students, 1,750 undergraduate students. So, any guesses what that amounts to? That's about, and if you do on a per student fee, per student cost, from £9 million for 2,550 students, that works out to be a little over $4,200 US per student. $4,200 US in the past year that one university was giving per student $4,200 to agents for students that enrolled at their institutions. I don't know about you, but we're not paying anywhere near that right now. And $500 sometimes makes a difference. Certainly a couple thousand will make a difference. $1,500 certainly will make a difference in terms of an agent's, in some areas, an agent's willingness to send their students to, or encourage their students to apply to institutions where they're getting higher commissions. I'm not saying that's the case with York and Exeter here. York also paid $9 million. They didn't share how many students were recruited by agents in that last 5 years. But to give you a sample of the difference, Exeter in 2021, the per student agent commission was about $4,200, as I mentioned. For 5 years ago, agents were paid $2.5 million for 1,100 students. So that's obviously more than double the number of students, but nearly quadrupled, at least tripled the amount that they were paying. So they went from about $2,500 to $4,200 in the course of 5 years in terms of the amount of the fees that they were charging, and that was the per agent fee difference for the 1,100 international students in 2016. Got paid £2.5 million to the £9 million paid out to recruit 2,500. So more than double the number of students, but more than triple the amount of commission paid. And that works out to be an average difference of about $1,700 more in 5 years. University of Exeter increased their commission per student to increase the number of international students that they enrolled. So it's the article itself is focused on the dollar amounts that some of these British institutions are paying. That has now, you see some institutions going from £720,000 5 years ago to $5.1 million in the last year. So there's certainly, you're seeing differences certainly the increase. Agents have been driving a lot of the growth that these institutions have felt, and those commissions have certainly been contributing to that. So you think about it when, if you have a student that is applying to a British university, like one of these, and then applying to your university, and academically might be the same, but if that student is getting, agent is getting $4,200 versus $3,000 at your institution, is that going to make a difference for you if you can send 4 or 5 students as an agent? Ideally, your agent should be acting in the best interest of the student and finding that best fit, as we all hope and pray that happens, but we know that's not always the case. So I wonder how much more these commissions are making a difference in that mix. So that's just my question for the day, is to get a sense on what people's thoughts are on this phenomenon, on the how the commission rates have skyrocketed so significantly across these institutions in the UK. I wonder if that's reflective of larger trends, and not knowing what those average agent fees are in Canada, but I would hazard to say there in Australia in the voc tech sector, you probably will see some pretty significant commission rates jumps over the last 5 years. particularly for Canada. That's what I would put my money on. But you see where the growth has happened. You know that more U.S. institutions started using agents, certainly in the last 5-10 years. But are we doing them well yet? Do we all have our acts together in that respect? Clearly not. Are we all working with agents the way we need to in terms of seeing it as another relationship we have to foster and feed and encourage at times? So these are the things that I certainly don't know if we have a clear grasp on why we're not seeing the growth yet. Commission rates might be a piece of that puzzle. If some are holding on to $2,000 per student flat fee, then you may be not getting as many students because agents aren't going to be as incentivized to send. That needs to be a part of the reality of businesses in the pandemic. Certainly, you see, we've seen articles recently that commission rates will need to increase because of inflation and all the other factors that have impacted us over the last 3 years. So we've got a lot of obviously moving parts that affect what we do in international education. And what some of these UK universities have been doing is, frankly, a very creative way to do it, a very simple way, but it's been effective for them. So whether other colleges in other parts of the world take that example and follow suit, to be determined. But certainly there's a lot of moving parts out there, and we know that you have a lot of there are a lot of questions out there that none of us can really answer fully, but we can get there together, and certainly happy to help out along the way if we can. So thanks to everybody for joining us on this week's SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. Wish you the very best and hope to see you soon. Cheers.